Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to What Happened to You. Before we begin today's episode, I want to share a review that came in from S. Hunter 2022 titled Amazing Show with a Great Message. This show makes complex issues destigmatized, often through the lens of comedy. One of my favorite podcasts. Appreciate all of the brave guests who have come on and shared their stories. Keep up the great work, my dude. Thank you, S. Hunter or Shunter 2022 for this lovely review. And if you haven't already, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave a review of the podcast. Reviews help a lot with the algorithms and allow more people to discover the podcast. So thank you to everyone who's left reviews and to everyone who is leaving a review currently. Hey!
Hi.
What's up, guys?
Nothing much.
Wow, it's great to finally see you guys and meet you both.
Yeah, you too.
So, how are you feeling about this?
We're feeling good. Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good. I've been listening to your podcast since
So long.
2019.
Yeah.
So, it feels like I've been chatting to you for a while. So,
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for listening. I'm glad. So, I think in your original message, you said you found it through TikTok?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just
Love
on my
that.
For You page, I was like, oh.
What was on your For You page? Which video? Do you
It
remember?
was like one of your first like TikTok videos, and it was I don't exactly remember, but it was just like, oh, I'm starting this podcast about I don't know, getting molested. So, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like the podcast for me. So, and you were so like, it wasn't like the TikTok. You weren't like, oh, I talk about my story. It's so sad. It was just upbeat, and I was just like, yeah, it sounds great. So.
Oh. Well, I'm so glad that it popped up on your For You page. It's fun. TikTok's crazy like that. Like
I know.
the
Yeah.
app just decides what you see, and we're like, great. I'm down to watch it, and somehow it knows what we like. And I don't know how it knew that you got molested too, but great job, TikTok.
I know. Seriously.
Okay, well, do you guys have any questions at all before we jump into it?
I don't think so.
No.
I think we're good.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's do it. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I can feel the good energy already through the screen. It's going to be a great time. Camryn and Madison, thank you both so much for being here. What happened to you two?
So, I guess we'll just give it a little preface, and then we'll kind of go into it. We didn't really know how to start. We were like, ooh, but so we were both sexually molested when we were younger, by the same person. We kind of had this perfect storm situation of our mom being addicted to drugs and her being really alienating of our family, and then marrying this piece of shit guy that ended up molesting us. So yeah, Karen's gonna talk first about her experience.
Got it.
So, I try not to invalidate my situation, but it only really occurred the molestation once, but he did a bunch of other creepy stuff that I'll talk about after this. But the one time it did happen, we had a bed in our living room.
Hella classy.
I don't know why. I don't know if they had a different bed in their room or what exactly happened, but bed in the living room. And I remember we're watching a movie, but we're sleeping there. We're gonna sleep together, just me and my stepdad. I don't know where we have two younger brothers. I don't know where they or Maddie were. Maybe just in their room, maybe with our biological dad. I'm not exactly sure. I also remember all of this not as a consecutive chain of events, but as just little memories that pop up. Because
Totally.
sometimes that's how trauma works. Don't really have the best memory.
Absolutely.
But so I remember, whatever, I'm wearing sweatpants, and he's like, might get a little hot. So when you go put on some shorts, I'm like, yeah, okay. So put on some shorts, come back, and I guessing I fell asleep, and then I kind of woke up, but not waking up I'm opening my eyes. I'm but just I'm awake, but I'm my eyes are still closed.
Yeah.
But I feel a hand on my leg, and obviously, like, I open my eyes a little, take a little peek. Okay, I know it's him. And it's like, it feels like a long time, like, in between the advances, but it was only like, I don't know, a minute or a couple seconds, or I'm not really sure, but it feels like it was a long time.
Yeah.
But so eventually goes to outside of my shorts, outside of my underwear, eventually in my underwear with his hand. And so that goes on for, I'm not sure, kind of a couple minutes, I'm not sure.
Well, time totally warps. It's like you have no concept, nor are you like wanting to be like, okay, 1, 2, like there's no, it's not how our brains are. We're just like, wow, I don't even know. I might be dreaming, you know, it's like very hard to know what's going on. So I get the time warp completely.
Absolutely.
And I was definitely present, like, during the whole time. Like, a lot of, or like, not a lot, but some people say, like, they just try to, like, disassociate, think of something else. But I was pretty present. And I remember, like, when he first had his hand on my leg, I remember thinking, like, this is an adult that I trust, like, a man. And, you know, like, I'm supposed to be attracted to men. And so maybe, you know, maybe this is just supposed to happen. And I remember thinking, like, maybe I want to kiss him. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay. But then obviously that didn't happen. And then when it started advancing, that's when I was like,
this might be fucking weird.
Like, I don't know if this is wrong. Like, oh my gosh, like, this is really bad. But I'm just like, this is weird. Yeah. This is weird. Like, I don't.
Did you say when he started dancing?
Advancing.
Oh, advancing.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that was weird when he started just doing a jig, but
yeah, the natural post-molestation dance. Yeah, for sure. Oh, my bad. Heard you wrong.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Wait, how old are you? You didn't say.
Oh, I was probably, I'm not exactly sure, but probably around 8.
7 or 8, yeah.
7 or 8, that's what I'd say. And so that happened, and then I'm not exactly sure, like, how the next chain of events happened, but it was the same night. In that night, like, I don't, like, okay.
So hard.
So
sometimes.
At some point of the night, like, before we started watching the movie, no.
Maybe before you started watching the movie.
Who knows? I don't remember anything that was going on other than the thing that happened, for sure. Yeah.
We made, like, M&M cookies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, dude. So yeah, I did get some M&M cookies out of that. That was cool. And I remember that, like, so vividly. Like,
it's so weird.
I don't remember the day, like, what I did before that, like, the whole rest, like, but I remember we made M&M cookies, man. Like,
it's weird the things you remember and the things that you don't, you know? Like, sometimes we're, like, talking about, like, a memory or something, and, like, she says something and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. She's like, how the heck did you remember that out of all the stuff that was going on at that time, you know? Like, just random little things that make no sense.
It's so bizarre. I wonder if it's like our brain trying to latch on to anything else. It's like, oh, you know, the M&M cookies would be way more chill to remember than your stepdad molesting you. That would be, like, so much better if that's what your brain remembered. So maybe it's a defense mechanism. I don't know. Or maybe they were just good cookies. Who knows?
I know. The weird part is I don't remember eating them. I just remember, like, rolling the dough, putting them in the oven. So weird.
Yeah.
So weird. But then also the same night, he also, like, took my hand, made me not, like, to completion, but just a little, you know. I don't like just a little bit of he made me do it to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there was just, like, a bunch of just, like, weird things that he did. Like, one time I was just taking a shower, and the shower, like, window faced to the backyard. And I'm taking a shower, reach up for some shampoo, there's his face. I'm like,
God.
Oh my God. So I look away. And then I, like, look back and I, like, peek over the window. He's just walking back to the house. I'm like,
oh my God.
I'm like, oh my God, what the?
I remember that happening to me too.
Yeah, it only happened, or I only remember it happening once, but I was just like,
I also remember being like
That was
super
weird.
like paranoid, like always looking out the window then, like not anyone can look, you know, like you just think about like is everyone just gonna look in here now?
Oh yeah, I mean, you start feeling you all of a sudden. It's like anything's. You're just walking around on eggshells, just sort of like where I
Sure.
I totally get that. And is this before or after the molestation?
After,
Gotcha.
I think.
I feel like he just went like balls to the walls first and then like kind of like
Yeah, interesting
He-
He,
reverse.
like he,
Went backwards.
he escalated. It was but
Yeah.
also, so yeah, I forgot to say this. So I don't remember when this happened, but I remember at one point me being like, okay, like this is not like okay anymore, and I was just like, oh, I'm really cold, and we had a separate blanket on the bed, and so I just wrapped up in my own blanket and went to the edge of the bed, like the edge, not the end, like the other
Yeah.
side. And he was just like, oh, well, if you're cold, like, and I just didn't say anything and just like shut my eyes, just went to bed, like, and maybe that's why he like maybe didn't try again after that, because he was like, oh, she like pulled away, but who knows. But also, so yeah, shower in the face, or seeing his face in the shower, that was weird.
Yeah.
One time, like, so I got like soap in my eyes in the shower, and I was in 4th grade, and I don't know like how he knew that. Like, I don't think I was making a lot of noise or like
I'm
screaming like,
washing
oh
my
my
eyes
god,
right
like
now.
there's soap in my eyes. Like, I don't think I was doing that. But somehow he came in, and I was like trying to get a towel, and he like, not forcefully like, oh, give me that, like, but he was just
Yeah.
like, oh, like get back in the shower. So whatever, got in the shower, helping me wash my eyes out, and like there was no more soap in my eyes, and he was still like trying to wash my soap out, and he was just like, oh, like you're so beautiful, like nothing, like
Yeah.
he didn't like touch any like of my private parts or anything, but he was just like way longer than like there's no soap in my eyes anymore.
And you're in the
Right.
4th grade, like I think you can wash.
Yeah,
yourself
yeah,
out,
like
you
it
know,
wasn't horrible, so
Yeah.
yeah. And just like different like things of like he would like sit on the couch like in basketball shorts. Oh, I can see his genitals, like
Yeah.
with no underwear, and I can see his whole area, and I'm just like, oh my god, dude, like does he realize that? But obviously
Yeah.
now I'm like, yeah, that was probably, a little grooming situation going
Definitely.
on. And also one time in the shower, so I don't know why, I looked out of the shower curtain, oh, full phone under the door, like with the like the back camera, like, and I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, oh my god, like of course in my head I'm like, okay, I know who this is. Like I didn't see him, wasn't, but I'm like, it's his phone, like, come on.
Yeah.
Who else is
Yeah.
doing this weird crap? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not Maddie.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
So
And is this like what was your thought process, if you remember? Do you remember what you were thinking like after the molestation happened, like after you went to bed that night and sort of woke up the next day? Do you remember what you were thinking at all?
I don't remember, like I only remember like that, like the making M&M cookies and then those like 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember like morning after. I do remember like, because our mom worked at a casino and she came home like early in the morning. She like worked at night as a car dealer for like a little bit, like she couldn't keep a steady job, like maybe a month or 2. But she came home like super like early, and I remember like waking up, but not like getting up, just opening my eyes, like seeing that she was home, and then fell back asleep. But I don't remember morning after, week after. And I think
Yeah.
I just tried just not thinking about it. Like I was just
For
like,
sure.
that's over. Like,
Yeah. I always wonder, the reason I ask is just because I also have no recollection of what I was thinking or any sort of, I think it was just like, let's pretend this never happened and move on. And it seems to be a pretty consistent reaction that people have to these things.
Right.
Yeah.
You're definitely not trying to remember.
Yeah.
That's for
Totally.
sure. That's for sure.
yeah. And then just another weird thing, I also remember like we were young,
Yeah.
and like we take shots with him.
Yeah.
Shots
A
of
lot of
alcohol. Like
drinking.
not like shots on shots, but like just, oh, like take this one shot. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
A lot of
Whoa.
underage drinking for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially for me, I feel
And-
like, because I was like a little bit older near the end.
And I was like, like wrote out some notes for this because it's pretty buried like in my mind. I don't think about it every day.
Yeah.
Like it's not like
Of
something
course.
that really, so I like had to like dig those up, and then I realized that we were taking shots, and we were like,
You're like 9 years old.
yeah. I was like, dang. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. But those are just like the few really weird things. I'm sure there's more, but
Yeah. Oh yeah.
thankfully.
Really fascinating reverse grooming in some way. I've never heard of this sort of trajectory, and I wonder what was going on in his head that made him not attempt to do it again. Maybe it was the resistance that you showed, because I didn't show really any resistance other than like rolling over. But even then, I didn't like say anything to the guy. I just would roll over, so he didn't necessarily. You might have just stopped it right in its tracks. It's possible.
I think so.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, because I had a more similar experience to you where it happened like over like a period of years, and like at random times. I don't even remember how many times. Like I remember them asking, like before we went to trial and stuff, like how many times. I'm like, dude, I have no clue. Like,
Yeah.
I literally have no idea. It's been like
25
5 or 6
times.
years. Yeah.
Glad you finally asked.
A lot.
Yeah.
Check my journal.
Hold on, let me go look. Yeah, I've been marking. Like no, like no. But
so how did this all begin for you, Madison?
So since it happened like so many times, there's only like very few times that I really remember it happening. And other than that, I have like absolutely no idea, honestly.
Yeah.
But the first time we were in the same house. I'm sure it was around the same time. Oh, also just to let you know, me and Camryn have never talked to each other about this before. This was my very first time hearing her
about the specifics.
Talk about it.
About the specifics.
Wow.
Yeah, we never
amazing.
have. Yeah, so
this is probably pretty trippy then, I imagine.
Yeah.
And just to ask you really quick here, when did you, or maybe this makes more sense to, I'll edit this part out. I was just thinking, because I wanted to ask you, when did you guys find out that it had been happening to both of you? But maybe that would make sense to ask later when we get closer to the trial. What do you think?
Yeah, that's when we found out.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we were living in the same house, obviously. So we're assuming it was around the same time, but we have no idea. And I had a bedroom upstairs right next to their bedroom, and all my other siblings were downstairs. And we were like watching a movie on a laptop in my room, like on my like twin bed. I'm like, that's just weird to begin with, like
you and your stepdad.
Yeah.
So the same play. This is the same,
the same
tactic that
it's pretty much exactly like to a T the same exact thing. Like we were just watching a movie, and like Camryn said, like I don't even know how much time it was in between like him advancing, but like it feels like a long time, but it probably wasn't when you think about it. And like that was the first time. Like I really don't remember a lot. Like I remember we were watching the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like I weirdly remember that, but like I don't remember like anything about what I was wearing or like what exactly happened or really anything else.
And like, why would you also? I know we can get more into this later with the trial, but like it would be crazy to recall any outfit that you wore at any time during that age, or even today. Like I couldn't tell you what I wore like last week or even yesterday. I have no idea.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I will remember the cookies and the movies and all of these other miscellaneous. It's so bizarre how our brains work, but I know exactly what you mean.
And then I'm trying to think about like, I don't really remember like in line, like when these things were happening, but like I remember one time I was on my period and like I was kind of like doing what you were saying, where I wasn't saying anything, but I was like turning away and like kind of like trying to get away, but like he wasn't really stopping. And then by the time it was like over, there was like blood all over my like shirt and like my pants. I was like, that's literally disgusting. Like that's so gross, like on top of you already being disgusting, this is over the top for me now. You know?
Yeah, have some class.
Yeah,
You're gonna molest me.
exactly.
Yeah, give me a week break. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah,
Exactly. And so I also remember him doing like random weird things. Like if he was like walking behind or like around and he would like just like brush like on my butt or something. And like it was just like, I don't know, it's just like so weird and creepy, you know?
And it was almost like,
And, like,
wait, was that an accident? It was like,
Yeah.
was that like kind of like second guessing myself? Like,
right.
Yeah.
like, well, that was weird. Like, whatever. I'm like, whatever. Like, maybe it was just an accident. I don't know. But
Right.
it's like, no,
Yeah.
that was not an accident.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's like the epitome of the grooming phase, is that you're trying to figure out if this is even malicious, and you don't know, and you really have no reason to think that it is because it's somebody that you trust and
Right.
is an adult. So it's like it's so confusing, and I remember feeling exactly the same way, where sometimes even when the molestation was happening, I was like, okay, well, we kind of said that this was some sort of a game that's now morphed into something that wasn't really what the game was originally, but I still like
yeah,
kind of
didn't
thought
sign
that
up
I,
for this.
yeah, exactly. So you just don't, you're trying to piece the puzzle together, but you just don't really have any, it's so hard with those, you want to believe that it was an accident.
Right.
Yeah.
You
In
try
the
to
same way
make
that you want to
yourself-
believe that it didn't happen when the molestation was happening. So you're really looking for any reason to not have this be the reality. But yeah, the seemingly accidental interactions are oftentimes the most confusing.
Right, for sure. And it like Camryn was talking about earlier, like I don't remember any of that happening before he actually molested me. So like I like reverse. I don't know. Like it was so weird, you know? Like
So weird.
but
Like,
I don't
do
know
you
if
remember
but
like them getting married super quick?
yeah.
So my thought was like maybe because I remember that too. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm already married to their mom. Like
Right.
now I can just go for it, like whatever I want. Like I don't have to like really like do all
True.
this pre like grooming because I'm already so easy access, right?
Yeah.
So perhaps that's why.
And during this time our mom was gone like a lot at night because she worked in a casino, but that didn't last very long because she was like passing out in bathrooms and stuff. So she she couldn't really have a job for very long.
That'll do it. When
Yeah.
did so do you remember roughly how old you are when this started happening?
Yeah,
How old
so
you
let's
were?
see. They got married when I was in 6th grade. So I would say that this started happening in 5th or 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally, when did,
How many years are you guys apart right now? Or always?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And we kind of like follow these chains of events by like what house we were in when. It's not like, oh, how old were we in? It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, I know that this happened in this house and like this happened in this house, but
Oh, that's so
moved
spot
a
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like we're not sure like, oh, did we live in this house before this house or this house
Right.
first? And so we're just like, all right, we were just in this house.
Yeah.
So, like that's kind of how we
That's how we've been gauging
change our
time
events.
because
Yeah. No, I remember. Yeah, you remember. I remember what the ceiling looked like and what the bed was, but I don't remember what point in time it was.
right.
My
And
brain was
also
exactly
like
the same.
different from Camryn, like I did like a lot of dissociating like all the time, like even just like in like my daily like life with things that I didn't like. I feel like because I got so used to doing it at home, like
Yeah.
I couldn't I like just like stopped remembering like so much stuff because I was just like in a different, like literally on a different planet, like
So you were
not
like
even here.
daydreaming, or like what was the disassociation like for you?
I feel like when the abuse was happening, it was just more of like thinking about it being over, like trying to think about like, oh, what else I'm gonna do today, or like what I did yesterday or something,
Yeah.
which I do remember. But other than that, like I don't really, the reason that like obviously like me and my therapist have talked about like how I know that I was dissociating is I don't remember anything really from like growing up or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
besides like really tiny parts. But I don't really remember like being that age and what I was dissociating, or like what I was thinking about when I was dissociating.
Totally.
Yeah, so now I guess we can talk about our mom and like kind of where she was with that whole thing and like her drug abuse and whatnot, and like, yeah, so I never like saw, or I don't think any of us really saw her like injecting drugs or like doing any like snorting anything crazy, but there's definitely like not open needles, like most of the time they had the cap on them, but needles like in her purse, around the house. The house was always really messy, so like just stumble upon them. Yeah. And she'd always like have like medicine that like she had to go get, or like she would lose it in the house sometimes and make us all like throw the whole house apart because it's really expensive. Like she really needs this medicine, like, and we would we were looking, we didn't know we were like being medicine, man. Like, golly, like, fuck no. But yeah, her like being high was really just like dozing off, but I don't know if you would. It was like always.
It's hard to like explain to people that have never like seen someone like high on like, you know, like nearing the end of like us being with her, like she was using fentanyl, like, and so it was like I mean, we don't know for sure if she was like doing heroin before that, but we're pretty sure. And so in before that, it was like pain pills, you know, like the regular like progression of drug addiction, unfortunately.
And she like wasn't going backwards like with the molestation starting to go and she's on weed by the end. Yeah,
that would have been nice. But like it's hard to like explain to people like, you know, that have never seen it before, but like literally you would just be like having a conversation like this and she'd just be like
falling asleep,
like,
standing up, she's like,
whoa, you know. And that's like probably like 90% of the time, I would say, like from when I was in 5th grade to, I mean, when we left, and I was a senior in high school then, so it was a long time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like 2008 to 2016.
I mean, she still probably abuses drugs now, but we just aren't around, so.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you don't like, it's weird for us because like since we grew up in it, like we didn't really realize that like when we started telling people about it, they're like, okay, that's really fucked up. And we're like, oh no, like it was totally fine. Like we were okay.
She did this all the time.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, like I didn't realize that this was such a problem, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's all relative too. It's like, all right, you might be dozing off during our conversations, but you're not molesting me. Like that's pretty chill,
right,
like,
totally.
Comparison, for sure.
Exactly.
And it's like I just recently told my friend about like, oh yeah, like my mom would like, our mom would be at stoplights and like doze off, and we'd have to be like, whoever's in the front seat, light screen, and like I was telling them that like, haha, and they were like, that's crazy, like that's crazy, dude. I was like, yeah, like I guess so, I guess that is pretty crazy, like. And then 90% of the time, 10% of the time, like, we were cleaning. She was making us clean like maniacs. Yeah. Because the house was always messy.
It was always messy.
Like disgustingly messy. Like,
it like wasn't even that like, well, obviously like there's 4 kids, you know, that creates a lot of mess, but like it wasn't even like we were like inherently messy. Like it was mostly her like being up all night and like, you know, her like drug induced state and just like wrecking shit through the house. Like we would be up like all night just like listening to her like slam cupboards or like throw dishes around for like obviously no reason other than she was high, and then we would wake up and the whole house would be like a disaster. Like, nice, all right.
And like it wouldn't just like, hey, could you pick up the living room? Like it would have to be spotless. Like we're vacuuming, like we have this like big island at one house, and like it would be cluttered, like nothing could fit on it. All right, I clean it all off, wipe it down, and then they'd be like, there's a speck like on the grout, and like make you like scrub it. I'm like, this thing is never clean. Like, why can't you just be like, thanks for cleaning it off? Like, that was just super weird.
Yeah. How did she and your stepdad meet?
Oh god. So we had this like across the street neighbor at our at one of our houses where we lived. I would say we probably lived there for the longest amount of time. Her and our dad bought that house. And so they lived there together for a long time. I don't really remember. We moved in when my youngest brother was like right after he was born. So we probably lived there for like 7 or 8 years. And so we were really good friends with, the neighbor across the street. And it was like her son's friend or something, but he was like 10 or 12 years younger than my mom. Like he was closer to my age than he was to like her age.
Whoa.
Like it was creepy.
Yeah.
Like he was
in
really
his
young.
20s and like my mom were in her 40s.
Yeah.
That's
When
wild.
they met, yeah.
And you said that they got married pretty quickly.
Yeah, I feel like they did.
I feel like. I don't exactly know, but
because I remember because we were still in the same house and we weren't there for like a really long time with both of them. So it was pretty quick.
Yeah. Because they had like super unstable jobs. Like the only job I remember him actually having, like real job on payroll, is like he worked for this oil company
on an oil rig.
And he would just go away for like weeks.
He would go away for 2 weeks and then be home for 2 weeks. And like, that was like the best time, obviously, because like we weren't getting molested, but like also the worst because we had to like take care of our freaking, like passed out mom all the time. Yeah. And we had younger siblings. So like we had to take care of them. Like we straight up just like wouldn't go to school and like.
And if we wanted to, we would have to get up. We'd have to dress the boys. Then be like, okay, mom, we're ready to go. Just wake up. Gotta just get to the car. Like,
and like it was still iffy if like she was gonna drive us to school or not.
Right.
Yeah. And if we get there alive. Even like in the morning, if we did wake her up and be like, okay, like, like we need to go to school. Sometimes it would take her like 30, 45 minutes, an hour to like even like get up and come to the car or like just like do like the simplest things. And like she would never like obviously like not be functioning enough to like go to the grocery store or anything. So like sometimes like on a good day maybe we would like go to McDonald's, but like if not we'd be eating like freaking cinnamon tortillas or some shit for like a whole day,
Yeah.
Where
is go ahead.
At least like when our stepdad was home, like if she was just like whatever, like we can just push her off like on him, or at least he like, I don't actually remember him like driving us to school really a lot.
I don't remember that either.
Like at least we could like push some of the responsibilities off on him, but it still wasn't like, he was going grocery shopping and making dinner and everything. It was just like, then we don't have to deal with mom like when he's home. So
was your biological dad involved in your life at all?
So let's see. So my parents had me, and then they got married shortly after I was born, and then they had Camryn, and then shortly after that they got divorced, and then I was probably in maybe third or fourth grade, and they got married again.
To each other?
To each other.
Whoa.
And then in like the end of fourth grade or fifth grade, they got divorced again.
Wow.
And then that's when they were really done for good, apparently. But yeah, so he like,
and also they had both of our brothers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't know if they were married.
All of us are full siblings from my mom and my dad. So thank God she didn't have any kids with him.
My stepdad.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he was like around, like not really, like he worked a lot when we were younger. And then that kind of continued when they first like kind of really got divorced for the second time. And then my mom just always like talked so bad about my dad, and that like he didn't like care about us and he didn't want to see us.
Never
and, like,
reached out. He was just like,
but like when we grew up, we realized that like she was just like bullshitting us pretty much. Like she wouldn't tell us like if he called, or he tried to like, like get different custody of us and all this different stuff. And like she would like obviously just go to court and fight it. And she never really made it like a conducive environment for us to like want to see him. So like it's so weird to think about for me, because like I would like, so like sometimes when my brothers or whatever would go visit my dad, like I would choose to stay at home. I'm like, why would I do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I still think about. Like, why, like, did my mom must have made it like sound so bad,
Yeah.
you know, to be with my dad, that I literally wanted to stay home and get molested. Like,
Yeah.
like okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
our
what is
dad-
happening at your dad's place that makes it? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
wild.
exactly.
Well, I feel like it's just. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you can go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, in the same way that we'll sort of believe whatever we're told at that age, whether it's with regards to molestation or just whatever it is that adults tell us, it's like, okay, if your mom's telling you this, saying this, whatever it is about your dad, even if she's in this wild state of drug-induced sleepiness or just general sort of disarray, it's still somebody that you trust, and you don't really have any reason to believe that she would be lying about this. So it makes a lot of sense. I wonder what your brothers, or if you ever talked to your brothers, like when they would come back from your dad's. Do you remember any conversations like that?
I still like went over there sometimes and like spent some time like every other weekend or whatever, and like we had fun. Like my dad didn't have a lot of money. He kind of like stopped working. He started having like a bunch of like medical issues. So he was like pretty poor, but I mean like he did like fun stuff with us, you know, like he grew up with 6 siblings, and like his parents were pretty poor. So like he knew how to like make it fun for us, even though we like had no money, you know, like
Go
we would go
fishing,
fishing,
to
yeah.
lake, you know, like,
and just like do like, I don't know, like kid stuff, you know, like he would like make us rope swings, and like we had like all these chickens, and like he lived on this farm. Like it was just like, it was like normalcy over there mostly, you know.
Totally.
yeah.
But for some reason we were just like, nope.
And like right now we still talk to our dad.
Oh,
Like we
yeah.
have a good relationship
Yes.
with him. Like he struggles with his own like mental health issues and a little bit of drinking, but he's never like physically, mentally,
No.
verbally abused us in any sense. So
Yeah.
Me and Camryn,
it's a lot better than, you know,
Yeah.
what we got going on at my mom's house.
Yeah. Well, maybe, you know, part of it could be also that one of the things we talk about on this podcast all the time is like the guilt of survivors, the like what will happen to other people if we get out of this environment. I imagine that because you guys were so you did so much for your mom, not just cleaning, but like waking her up and in these things that like you said, when your stepdad would come home, you could kind of pawn off the responsibilities to him. You know, like I wonder if you would have felt some guilt in leaving your mom alone. And maybe that's part of why you wouldn't go to your dad's, if you were these kid adults essentially that had to adapt to this wild environment. That could have been part of the reason.
absolutely. I think that like I had like this really I don't know, like codependency with my mom, you know, like I had to be there and take care of her, and like I never wanted to leave her alone, and like I felt like I had to take care of my younger siblings and like make sure that they were okay. And like I feel like that's kind of why I let the molestation go on for so long, is because I was like, okay, well, if he's going to do this to me all the time, then he's probably not going to do it to anyone else, you know?
That's
So
it.
I'll just put the team on my back for this one, and this is no biggie, you know? Like, let's just deal with it.
Hey, and way to go. We applaud you for the
Yeah.
sacrifice. This is exactly. So many people feel this way, and it's also not just restricted to like your siblings. I mean, obviously in this case, those are the people that are under the same roof. Which in my case was my friend. You know, I was like, all right, well, if I were to get out of this situation, then presumably my friend would just get molested more. So, you know, we are these sacrificial lambs to an extent, and we feel like this burden of responsibility that sometimes just seems easier to endure ourselves rather than, you know, pass it off onto the next person, especially when it's people that we love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And what's interesting is that Maddie didn't know, like when we were in the situation when it was happening, she didn't know that it happened to me or like anything was happening with me. But I didn't know, but I kind of knew. I was like, okay, I'm guessing this is also going on, like some weird stuff's going on with her, but she never thought that like me, and that's something that came out like more near the trial and whatnot.
For sure.
Yeah, so after we like moved around like a bunch and that kind of stuff, do you want to talk about now
Mom,
when we left?
Yeah.
Okay,
so you know, like that was just life. Just we got sexually abused, moved around here once in a while. Mom's drugged out. Like, all right, I guess this is just forever. Like, I remember thinking like, like this is how it is. Like, I'm never getting out of this. So then one day I was in 8th grade. So
I was
2015. Yeah. 2016. And luckily like my brothers and Maddie weren't home. Like I had come home from track practice, and
I was actually I like went to my grandparents because they just bought me a new car. So I was like going up there to like get my new car. I was like, well, new to me, you know. Going up there to get my car, and then
I don't know where our brothers were, maybe with our dad or something.
Probably.
And I came home, and I remember like coming in, I'm like, where's mom at? Like car's in the driveway. And me and Maddie had the master bedroom. They let us have the master bedroom.
Sick.
Yeah.
So I go in the bathroom, and we had a stand-up shower, no bathtub, and she was like laying on the ground in the stand-up shower with just like weird things in her hand, like earbuds, but like not connected to like a phone or anything. Like I don't know. And I was just like,
like
dude,
what are you abnormal?
Like, I was just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, hey mom, like, come on. And then so of course it wasn't abnormal, so I was just like, dude, like get out of my room, like come on, like. But she was more like she was more irritable like this time. And our stepdad was in town, and usually like if she's being like a little crazy, I'm just calling our stepdad and being like, mom's out of it, like I'm not dealing with it, like come get her.
Yeah.
But I'm like, where's we called him Pop. Where's Pop? Like, where's Pop? She's like, and I was like, I'm gonna call him. She's like, no, like don't call him. Like, and was getting like kind of aggressive, and I was just like, this is like, I'm kind of scared right now. Like, I'm a little scared, and it was just different than like any of the other days where she was like hi or whatever. So I was just like, all right, let's just get out of my room. Like let's walk you like just down the hall. You know, like she's still out of it. She's not there, but so whatever. I'm just kind of like leading her to the door, shut the door, lock that baby. And then I'm freaked out. Like I'm nervous. So I go into the bathroom, I text my grandma, and maybe texted you too. And I was just like mom's whacked out, like I'm scared right now, like this is just too bad, like I need to like someone to come get me, like I'm scared right now. And so
we hatched a plan.
They're like, okay, like my friend lived right down the street, like 5 houses down, so they're like, just try to get over there and we'll pick you up. We'll pick you up from there, because that's going to be suspicious if I don't know, Maddie comes picks me up for no reason, like I don't know.
Yeah.
So
we were trying to like not raise a lot of suspicion, because there had been like several times before this where like CPS had been called by like people at our school or like our family members, and they would come to the house, and like it was seriously creepy, like how fast she would like click out of it and like be like normal. It was like I felt like sometimes she was like faking being high, because she would so quickly be normal if someone like knocked on the door.
So
like
normal.
for like for like a very short stint of time, like my mom was like into this whole crazy, like we were gonna be Mormons. So we always had like these like missionaries knocking on our door all the time.
The natural next step from heroin or fentanyl.
Yeah, exactly. Becoming Mormon.
Yeah.
So they would always be knocking on our door, and literally as soon as they would show up, it would be like this whole other like person, even though if like 2 seconds before she was literally like passed out high on the couch. Like it's the most creepiest thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
And that's why like now we can't really tell if she is using or not, because we know she can like snap out of it and fake it like super good. So it's just like we don't know. Like we don't really know.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, so they're like, get to your friend's house, we'll pick you up from there, like just try to get out of there. So I'm like, all right.
Because you guys also didn't necessarily want, like when CPS would be called, is this something that you were like wanting to get help from, or is this something that you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, everything's fine?
Yeah, we would totally be like, everything's fine. Because my mom, like she would like scare us and tell us like they're gonna take you away and like you're gonna have to go live with someone that you don't know, and like, do you want to like not see me anymore and like all that kind of stuff. And so like we were scared to talk to them. Like we didn't want to tell them anything. And like it's really funny because like our like grandma and like like a lot of our close family friends are CPS workers, so like during this time they were like, dang, like this is really like messed up, but, like they couldn't really do that much because we wouldn't talk. And so we learned that, like way after the fact, they were like, yeah, we were calling CPS all the time and like you guys wouldn't say anything, so we didn't know what to do. Like there was nothing else.
And also when CPS would come, they'd be like, oh, is anyone hurting you? Right. And I thought like, no one's like punching me in the face.
Yeah.
No, I'm not getting hurt. Like, no, like, man, I'm okay.
Fine,
like, I think this is normal. Like, this is just how it is,
right.
man. Like, this is my family. Yeah, we're doing good. Like,
yeah.
You're good. Are you okay? I'm not getting, hit around. So, yeah, things are good. So, yeah.
It makes total sense that we don't want these things, because in many ways that like, if we were to be like, yeah, CPS, like we need help, then it's like an admission of like, it makes all of these things that may not have been that big of a deal a very big deal. And it's a lot easier to move on with your life if you're just like, yeah, this is just what it is. It could be way worse. We're not getting physically hurt, I felt the same way about my molestation, where I was like, this isn't, like, I was never in pain, it's very hard to understand the emotional abuse, that the impact of the emotional abuse that we're going through during those times. But while it was going on, I was like, I mean, who am I to complain? Like, this could be so much worse. I know people, my friends of mine who are getting, hit by their parents and things like that. So we do everything we can to sort of make the situation seem as not that big of a deal as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So from there, ran to my friend's house. I was just like, I gotta get some homework. Like I left some homework there, gotta go get it. So I'm running down the street, and I remember like running. I'm looking back, she's standing on the lawn. I'm like, oh my God, but whatever. I just keep running. I get into the house. I'm like, my friend's like, what the heck? I'm like crying, and I'm just like, okay, bye. Like my sister's out front, I gotta go. But she was amazing. She was great. We still talk, but. So
and then I came in my new car.
I
was like, and my sister's like, I'm like, frick, all right, let's deal with this.
But thankfully a lot of our family are CPS workers, so my grandma's like, all right, we got a call. Next day a reporter came out.
See, because like it was different for me because I was like, I'm not gonna stop my regular life for this.
And
like,
she was
forget
in high
it.
school,
so they I can't remember if we stayed with my dad that night or if we stayed with my grandma. I don't really remember.
Yeah, us two drove back up to our grandma.
Yes, we did.
But our brothers were already with our dad.
And so, they were like, oh, like, we don't want you to go to school tomorrow. We want you to like, be here when the CPS lady comes, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'm going to school. Like, I'm not going to miss school just because like, I've already missed so much school. Like, can't keep missing school.
I finally have a ride to school. I can drive myself for the first time. I'm not going to stay home now. Yeah.
So they like met with the social worker, like during the day, like at a family friend's house. And then I like went to the CPS office like after I got out of school. I drove there because I was like, they kept asking me like, well, when can you meet? When can you meet? I'm like, I don't know, like when I get out of school. They're like acting like it's a huge deal.
3:30, guys. I don't know.
They're like super worried. I'm like, I don't know, like be there when I'm there. Like,
yeah, chill out, guys. We've been dealing with this for years. Like, what is the rush?
I know this is new to you, but it's nothing.
Yeah, so just the CPS case from there just kind of took off. Obviously, we weren't going back with our mom, but just like months, I think.
Yeah,
and
we
then
lived with my dad, and
she just did everything she had to do, whatever.
She had to like, and it was like really minimal, like what she had to do. Like, she pretty much had to like test clean. So like every week they would get like a color. And then every day you'd have to call, and like if they said whatever your color was, you had to go in and test. So it was like random testing. drug testing. And then she had to have like supervised visitation, which we didn't go to. Only my brothers went. So they did supervised visits, and it felt like it was only like 2 months,
Not
2
long
or
at
3
all.
months. And then they were like, all right, well, you seem well enough to have your kids back. And like, she definitely was not.
And we were old enough to be like,
we don't
really want to. Like, we have a dad that like lives separately. Like, we don't want to go back. And CPS like, okay, you're old enough.
Yeah.
You can decide, but your brothers have to go back. And like, I think it probably could have been more like a 50-50 custody thing. But again, like, my dad wasn't the stablest, and he didn't know like what was going on. So it kind of just eventually ended up with them being there a lot at my mom's. Yeah. And then not too long after that, we moved in with our grandma because just better environment.
She's stable.
Very stable. So that was great.
Yeah. She's been a really big support for us, for sure, through all of this.
Yeah. And then, like, we would always hear of just, like, different incidents, like, happening, like, different CPS, like cases opening, like, with my mom and, like, the boys brothers and whatnot, and just...
So, like, where we grew up is, like, super small. So, like, if anything happens, like, everyone knows about it, you know? And so, I guess one time my brother, like, reported that, our stepdad like shoved him into a wall or something, or like pushed him down and like called him a really bad name. And he must have, I think he reported that to school, to his teacher. And then we like kind of found out about it through like our like friends, because like, you know, it's just a small town and everyone talks about everything. So we kind of figured out that. And then like, I don't even remember like when it was, but we were both, you know, still living at my grandma's, and it was like really late at night. And when like the whole like CPS thing kind of blew up, my maternal grandfather like got really pissed off at us, and like that we were like betraying our mom, and you know, like we don't care about her, and like we're just like brainwashed. Or I'm like, okay. So we didn't really talk to him anymore. And it was like really late at night one night, and someone was calling me on the phone, and I answered it, and it was him. And I was like, oh God, like this cannot be good. And he was saying like, you need to like go get your brothers from your mom's house. Like your stepdad's like threatening to kill your mom, and he has a gun.
And he had a lot of guns.
And he had a lot of guns. Yeah.
Whoa.
And so we're like, what? So it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like,
we live 20 minutes away. Yeah. We're like, no, we're not going to go down there.
And I'm like, okay.
You guys go into the environment with the gun, like call the police. It's
exactly. So that's immediately what we did. We called the police, and we were like, you know, send them there or whatever.
But it's just so funny that your maternal grandfather's just like, you go on, kids.
Literally though.
Go collect your siblings.
Yeah.
But
and so
we sent our dad.
We sent our dad. We're like, Dad, you go over there.
Go get him.
Nice.
And he had to like, my dad had to like wait around because we were like on the phone or whatever with the operator lady, and like he had to like wait around the corner, and like they were like surrounding the house, and you know, like trying to like make entry, because they thought that like, you know, something seriously, it probably was seriously gonna happen. And then of course they like knock on the door, and everything's fine, like no worries here. Like, what do you mean, you know?
And the boys are of course like,
I don't know. So my dad did end up taking the boys that night. And I remember my mom like so weirdly calling me, and like her telling me that she was like getting ready for work, like in the car or something, and like she was in the garage getting ready for work in the car, and he was in the house. And I'm like, why don't you just leave, you idiot? Like,
open the garage.
Why are you there? And like, this was during a time when she had a job like at a nursing home, but it was more of like it was like out of someone's house.
It's private, like nursing home sort of.
So there was only like 4 or 5 like patients or, you know, residents. And then, you know, like she would like take care of them at night. And we quickly figured out that she was taking all of their pain medication from there, because we would find these like, they had these like sheets where like every day you would like punch out the medicine, you know. And I kept finding them, and they would have, you know, it's like Elaine, and you're like, who the hell's Elaine, you know? And there's like all these pills missing. And then I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that, like, stuff like that just kept happening, like CPS stuff. And
nothing would come out of it. It's just like, oh,
like, oh, everything's fine now.
It's good.
No
you guys
worries.
are good. You got the clear.
Yeah.
And then one time it reported to the school that like he got thrown against the wall. And me and my grandma were driving home one day from school, and we were just like talking about the situation, and she was like, you know, like, did anything like that ever happen to you? And I thought she meant physical abuse, so no, nothing like that ever happened to me. She's like, did anything else ever happen to you? And I was like, yeah. And I remember like she got kind of like mad, like not at me, but she was like, people can go to jail for that shit. And I was just like, yeah,
okay.
like,
I didn't say anything.
I guess so. I don't know. And then she was like, oh, like, do you think it happened to Maddie too? And I was like, I'm pretty sure.
And then like, I think it was, I don't know exactly if it was that night, like after they had talked in the car on the way home or not. But I remember like, we were just like, you know, having like a normal night. We all ate dinner and like watched TV, and I went in to go to bed, and like my grandma came in my room, which like she never really did, you know, like when we went into our rooms, that meant like, don't bother me.
Going to bed.
Yeah.
Like,
And she like came in my room and like sat on my bed, and she was like, yeah, like I was talking to Camryn today, and like I was just wondering, like, you know, if anything ever happened to you like there that you want to tell me. And I was like, no. And she's like, nothing inappropriate ever happened. And I was like, yes, it did. And then she was like, okay. She was like, that's what I thought. She was like, all right, let's get this figured out. And
it's so fascinating, because it's like I had the exact same experience with my mom, where she asked me like multiple questions in a row of like, did anything bad happen? Did you ever get hurt by, I call him Jim just to leave it anonymous. And until she like explicitly like asked me, did he ever touch you inappropriately? Until that happened, I wasn't able to articulate that it had happened. And even then I just said yes. But it's like, it's why it's so important to have these conversations, and why we have to realize that like, just because a kid hasn't said yes explicitly to something yet doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Like, you might not have phrased the question correctly in a way that resonates with their thinking, that makes them think like, oh, you know, this is a safe situation to speak up about this.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's like, I mean, I imagine most kids aren't, there certainly are some, and the more the better, but most kids aren't just actively speaking up about this. It's pulled out eventually by like an extended line of questioning. But
Absolutely.
It's why we have to do this. I mean, for all three of us were able to speak up because we were asked about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's ridiculous to me when people are like, oh, well, like, you know, they didn't say anything, like all those times when like CPS came, or like, oh, like they didn't say anything the very first time I asked. It's like, okay, would you?
You didn't ask my question.
Like, would you say something if you're, you know, like,
oh yeah, I couldn't wait to tell you about this.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Like, no.
So silly.
This is something that like you think you're gonna like take to your grave, you know, like you don't want to talk to anyone about ever.
Oh, that was my entire plan. That was
Same.
And also like when my grandma, like when we did like this all started, I was a sophomore in high school, maybe in college, and like I heard that, like I knew the term like sexual assault, sexual abuse, but I didn't really know, like, is that what happened? Like, I don't like know if that's how you classify it or what, like, and I heard like molestation, but I was like, I have no idea. I don't know. So I couldn't say like this, like I was sexually abused or I was like blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm just thankful that my grandma asked that, because I don't know if I would have ever like really spoke up and been like, hey. You know?
I mean, it really should be. I completely agree with you. And it should be like a regular check-in that every parent has with their kids or grandparent, whoever is in charge of you, to just have, you know, you can do this without it harming the kid. But that's why so many people are afraid to do it. It's like, oh, but what if then they know that this stuff can happen, and then they're not going to trust adults. It's like, yeah, well, they probably shouldn't, at least as much as we all do as it is.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a problem.
Yeah. And that has, I mean, like, I'm sure like we were all taught when we were kids, like, oh, you always respect adults, and like you always, you know, are like, you know, trust them and like give them the benefit of the doubt and whatever. And like, that's what's led to like so many kids, you know, being abused.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
not
like it's your
having to
mom's
speak up.
husband also. Despite the environment and all of these things that are happening, do you really want to potentially have your mom lose her husband? There's so
Right.
many things that we're juggling that make it impossible. Like
Absolutely.
everyone who hasn't been through it thinks that it would be so easy, but it's borderline impossible to unless
Yeah.
unless it's dragged out of us eventually.
Right.
And then what's funny is like the people that got us to speak up end up being accused of trying to convince us that
Yes.
something
Oh
happened.
my
Exactly
gosh,
what happened,
yes. Oh my
Talking
gosh.
about, why would my mom want this to have happened?
Yeah.
Why
And,
would
like,
your grandma want that?
Yeah. And especially like at trial and stuff, they're like, oh, well, like, we know you concocted this story and whatever. And it's like, do you think that I really want to memorize a story about being molested and then get up here and tell all these random people about it? Like, this is my worst nightmare right now. Like,
Yeah.
what do
That's the
you
thing.
mean?
There's no child would ever want you to think that that happened.
No.
Why would, especially
crazy.
when, you know, you look at these high profile molestation cases like with Michael Jackson or, you know, whoever, that people always accuse the accusers of going after money. And it's funny to think that like even in criminal cases where there's no money involved, you still get accused of wanting to have had this happen or wanting people to think that this happened. I didn't even kiss somebody yet.
Exactly.
Why would we haven't even gone through puberty. I mean, regardless of where you're at in all of these stages, it's not something, I don't know. I just woke up one day and I just really wanted people to think that my stepdad was molesting me. I just have always had this urge to really just have people think, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
So what was the sequence from basically where we're at until when you guys realized you were going to trial?
Okay. So literally the next day, after our grandma like found out that this had happened, we went to go see like one of her friends, who's a therapist, to like get our whole entire story out so she could report it.
She's a mandated reporter, so it wouldn't just be coming from like our grandma. It's like coming from a mandated reporter.
So we both like went into her office, and it was like Sunday, I'm pretty sure. And she like came in, you know, and Camryn went first, I think.
Maybe. And we knew her. She was like kind of a family friend,
like,
kinda. So it wasn't just a complete stranger, but we knew she knew our grandma and whatnot. She was really nice.
She is. And she later ended up being my therapist, which was perfect.
Nice.
So literally the next day we went and saw her, and we both like told her, you know, whole story and whatever. And then I feel like literally it was like the next day, and like it was like 8:00 in the morning. I had gone to school, and like they're like still in their pajamas, like just chilling, and like two detectives like show up on the doorstep, and they're like, oh shit, like that was really fast, you know, like. And so
I just roll out. I just woke up, like just out of bed. I go into the kitchen. Oh, two detectives are on my kitchen table. I'm like, hey guys, like, they were just like, they were amazing.
They were
like the detectives on our case were, everyone on our case was just amazing.
They were,
And you know, I just I had like notes that I had written like for when we told the therapist, and like this, like just again to kind of pull them out of my memory. You know, I really shoved them down deep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I just told them all about, you know, everything that happened, and they asked for my little notes, so I gave them my notes, and they were just like, okay, like, we're gonna talk to your sister and go from there.
And then later that night, after I was done with school, because I have to go to school.
Of course.
I went to like a courthouse that's like really close to us, and I met one of the detectives there, and like it was kind of like interesting because like we actually like sat in an interrogation room, because like that was really the only like space that was available.
Naturally,
like, like I just want you to let you know that like you're not in trouble or anything, but like there's like cameras that are recording you, and like, you know, we're gonna talk about this, but like you're not gonna be in trouble. And I was like, okay, I'm not really worried about it. And like he was super great with like saying like, you can use whatever words that you want to like talk about this or like whatever, but like I really need you to like very plainly spell it out for me, like, and I'll ask you questions if like I need more information,
Mm-hmm.
And so he was really great. And actually, like right before we went to trial, we read over like our whole like very first interview with the detectives, and like it was just like really funny to like look back on, and like in it I'm like joking about like being on Law and Order SVU, and he's like, like like
not
he's like totally weird, and he's like, it's not funny, and I'm like, sorry, like I have to laugh,
Of course.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So at the end of like my like first initial interview, he asked me, he was like, oh, like would you, because I was I over 18? Yeah, I must have been.
Yes, you were in college.
Yeah, so at the time I was over 18, so he asked me, would you be willing to do a pretext phone call, which is pretty much I would call him and ask him to
Call our stepdad.
try to get him to admit it,
Yeah.
So it was really funny. We met, it was a couple days later maybe, or even the next day, I don't know.
Yeah, it happened quick.
It happened really fast. And we met in like this like really like rundown like gas station parking lot of like our hometown, and we like parked like way like in the back, and it was just like me, my sister, my grandma, and then like they came in their car, and
They being the detectives. Okay.
Yeah. I had this like earpiece thing, I think, that I put in, and then I like had my own phone, but it was like weird because we didn't know what his phone number was, and they had like tried to search and find what it was, and they had found like 5 or 6 different phone numbers. So I was like calling all these different phone numbers off my phone to like see if it was him,
Yeah.
And then none of them worked. So we were like, shit, what do we do? And so I ended up calling my mom first, and I was like, oh, hey, like I was just wondering, could I have his phone number? And she's like, yeah, he's like sitting right here. I'm like, no, I need to call him, like I need to call his phone.
I just feel like chatting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, like
How you been? Yeah.
She's like, all right. So she gave me his phone number, and I called, and I was like, okay, well, like, is there any way that I could like talk to you alone, And he was like, well, like we can meet up later. And they told me to absolutely like deny and say, no, like I need to do it now, because they did not want us meeting in person. Obviously that was like a risk to myself and everyone else.
Right. And they didn't want your mom there because
I knew that he wouldn't admit it if she was, sitting right there.
Of course.
So I just kind of like, I tried to kind of like lead him into it on his own. Like I said, like, I've been going to therapy, and like I really don't want to have to tell anyone else about what you did to me, but I want you to apologize so like I can work on healing for myself, And he was like, yeah. So he was like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm really sorry that like I let your mom like be like so addicted to drugs all these years, and like I never like helped her like get out of it, and like like all these weird things, like, oh, I'm sorry that like the house was never like clean, and like I never like helped you with your homework, and like all this weird shit.
Yeah, that's why I'm in therapy, because the house
exactly. And so I'm like, no, I was like, you know what you did to me, and like you need to apologize, or else like I'm never gonna heal from this, blah blah blah.
And she said, or else you're a coward.
Yeah.
And
that was after.
Fuck yeah.
Hold on. That was after. So I was like, finally he was like, the detective was like giving me these signals. He's like, just say you need to apologize, for molesting me. So I just came out and said it, and I was like, I need you to apologize for like sexually abusing me for all those years. And he was like, what? He was like, oh, and I was like, you know what? If you can't admit to this, then you're a fucking coward. And then he was just like pretty silent. And I was like, this is like, you're pathetic. Like the fact that like you did this all these years, and like now you can't even apologize. And he was like just kind of like stumbling over his words and whatever. And then eventually I just said like, I just need you to say sorry so I can like move on. And he did say sorry. And then I was like, okay, cool, thanks. And then I hung up the phone.
I got you.
Yeah. But like, so they said that like what they were hoping for was that he would leave the house. So like it was like kind of cool. They had like already like put a tracker on his like car and stuff, and like, you know, like had him under all this surveillance. And so
yeah,
we were waiting for him to leave the house because they didn't want to have to go in to the house, one where he had a bunch of guns, and two where my brothers were, and like make a scene. And we really appreciated that, honestly, because we didn't want, you know, them to have to be a part of that. So
yeah.
literally immediately after we hung up the phone, we went to Starbucks because I was like, I had to go to work, but I was like, gosh, I really just like want to know that he's like caught or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So we go to Starbucks, which is like 10 minutes away, and like we're literally in the middle of ordering, and the detective calls and he's like, okay, we got him. Like, I was like, dang, that was fast. Because he like got immediately in his car, they said, and like started driving away. And I asked the detective, like when we were leaving, I was like, is there any way that you guys could like record this? Like, you know, like a
Get
cop episode?
Get the body cam
Yeah.
Like being arrested?
He said he was like yelling about like stuff
Yeah.
like this is bullshit, blah blah.
Yeah.
But it's like, buddy, you don't even know like what you're getting arrested for,
Right.
supposedly. Like,
Yeah. I'm sorry the house was messy. I didn't mean
Yeah.
take me away.
Exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, it was really, really quick.
You're just in Starbucks too, like
Yeah.
ice
I put it
macchiato.
on speakerphone because I was like, I want you guys to hear, you know? So they're like, we got him. And we're like, yeah. In the middle of
That's crazy.
Starbucks. And then, like, pretty much immediately after that, obviously they went back to the house and, like, you know, like searched the whole house for stuff, because I would assume because Camryn did talk about, like, you know, like the camera, like the phone camera and stuff, and like there being like maybe possible pictures. So they didn't find anything. Somehow like
Dang.
everything was missing, like all the phones, like my mom couldn't find them. I'm
And
like,
there was
okay.
like always a bunch of phones, like just dead,
Yeah.
like whatever, old,
Right.
like lying around. So I'm like, that's suspicious.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's
Very.
So we kind of had this weird, yeah. And then let's see, he went to jail, and then it was just kind of like a lot of waiting games, like waiting to see like what his bail would be, and waiting to see like if he, you know, was going to get let out, and like going to court and just waiting to hear like whatever like bullshit thing they had to say next, like, oh, you know, like he needs to go to his grandma's funeral, like he should be let out for one day. We're like, no.
Yeah.
Like nobody
Of course.
cares.
Yeah. But he ended up not like getting a lot, like a insane amount of bail.
Yeah, it was like $2
so
million.
he wasn't able to get out.
Whoa.
Stayed,
Yeah.
he stayed
$2
in jail
million.
the whole time, like till
Till the
trial.
trial.
So we were really happy.
damn. Oh,
Yeah.
my guy was like 50,000, and I was like,
Oh
that
my-
could probably be a little bit more, don't you think?
Yeah.
I know.
Doesn't seem to be enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like when it was like $2 million, I was like, that's garbage.
Not
Like he
enough.
should
Yeah,
have
totally.
bail. Like,
Why
come
can
on.
he buy his way out of it? He's threatening
Yeah.
children and molesting
Exactly.
children. What
Yeah.
price are we putting on this?
Yes. And we literally
Crazy.
live right next to a school. Like literally
There you go. Yeah.
immediately. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, great. And so thank God he didn't. And we were also worried about my brothers and my mom, that he would go home and like, you know, commit all this like violence because this all
Now
just came
accused,
out,
yeah.
and you know, he's probably going to
Yeah.
prison.
It is a funny thing to think about. Like, I've never really thought about this that hard until just as we're speaking about it now. But it's weird to be like, this. If you have this much money, you can go.
It's so
You don't, regardless of what you've
So-
done, seemingly, you might have threatened to murder people and have guns and have children and be molesting them, and you're just like, fuck it, if you can pay for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's our justice system is broken. to the
Bizarre.
max, for sure.
Yeah.
So after that, yeah, there's so much waiting. I don't even really remember how much
Months. I don't know.
time
Yeah.
lapsed before they pretty much
Not years.
not years,
But
months for sure. So we were like, the DA, like they were amazing, and like we had these like great victim advocates that we were really close to during this time, and they, you know, like gave us all these different options of like, you know, would you like to offer him a plea deal? And we were like, yeah, sure, we'll give him like 25 years or something. And
Yeah.
he's like, we're like, we know he's not going to accept this,
Yeah.
you know? So it was just kind of like a dumb like game pretty much, but they said like they have to do it in like good faith, you know, to like the DA's office does. So we're like, yeah, sure, but like 25 years, that's it.
So
like,
you guys got to decide that.
yeah.
Yeah, they were
They
were
yeah.
amazing. They were really
Yeah.
open.
That's wild.
Or they
Yeah.
said, "Do you guys want no plea deal at all? Like,
Yeah.
we don't even have to offer him. Like,
Mhm.
if you guys really don't, like, we go straight to trial."
Yeah.
And we were like, "We don't
We'll
really
give him a
want to
chance.
really go to trial like
Yeah.
that bad." So, all right.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Exactly. And so
But
gave
is
them
that
that.
because is that because you were over 18, Madison?
What?
Like if you guys were like 10, I assume they wouldn't have been like fucking
Yeah.
you guys want to play you know, there must be some sort of an age range
Probably
where
not.
They probably maybe they'd try for a plea deal maybe harder because we maybe were young or something, or maybe they would consult like Grammy. I don't know.
maybe, yeah.
But we were old. Like I was a
Yeah.
junior in high
I
school.
was in college.
So
yeah, so I was a junior in college.
Well, I'm just asking because I don't think I was offered. I don't think I had that offer. I mean, I was 11, so I don't know,
Yeah.
but it would have been crazy for them to be like, "All right, what do you think is a reasonable amount of
How many
time in this
years?
category?"
Yeah.
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 Whoa, trivia to think about. Damn. Okay, so you guys agreed. You were like 25 years.
Yeah. And then we offered that and he was like, definitely no. So we were like, hey, yeah, we expected that to happen. And then so pretty much we were going to trial and like they started like giving us these like subpoenas and like his attorney like tried to like subpoena like all of our phone records for like the last 10 years and like he subpoenaed like our school grades and like all this like weird stuff, like a lot
As
of
if means you can't have been molested. You're like, guys, look, she got a D in history. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Like,
literally.
what the fuck kind of a request is that?
Literally. So like we gave them like school records. They actually like, at least for me, they like subpoenaed like my therapy notes from like the last like year or whatever. Which
Oh, that's kind of fucked.
yeah. And so and then we denied the like like the phone calls for like the last like 7 years or whatever. We were like, you guys are just going on like a fishing expedition essentially, like trying to find something in our phones. Like, no, like and so they did like side with us on that. So pretty much all they got was like my therapy records and then like our school records, which I'm like, okay. And then
and you're like, you guys realize that we were like getting ourselves to school this whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know if you could take these grades in good in reasonable faith here. Like,
well, their whole thing.
Actually,
yeah.
we were getting good grades.
Yeah, and so
well, there you go. Yeah.
And they're like, no way this can be happening, and you're doing good in school. Like, how? I'm like,
they were like pretty much like I specifically remember like being up on the stand, and his lawyer was like, so you got a 4.0 in high school, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, and you're going to college at UC Davis? I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, so you're just being molested this whole time and you're getting a 4.0? And I'm like,
oh,
what the hell?
Yeah, well,
get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so insane.
Yeah.
So you think like it's, oh my God, because no matter how you were doing in school, there would have been a way for them to spin it where it's like you couldn't possibly, have been, either you don't know what you're talking about because you're failing, or you couldn't possibly have been molested because you're doing too well. It's like, it's just such a stretch. As if your ability to realize that you were being molested is dependent on your level of intelligence. Like no grade dictates whether or not you can detect if somebody's touching you inappropriately.
Right.
Oh, nuts.
Exactly.
When you got to the trial, like what was it like going into the courtroom? I assume, was your stepdad in the courtroom?
Yeah. He was there.
Right there with you.
Yeah,
So
he was right there. And like the most obnoxious part for me was like just waiting to like be called, because like one day they would call me in the morning and be like, okay, today for sure, like can you come at like 11 or whatever, and then I'd like be getting ready to go and like be super anxious, and they'd be like, oh wait, no, not today, like maybe tomorrow. And so like every day I was just like pretty much not going to work and sitting around the house like being stressed about going to trial because I couldn't do anything because I had to be there whenever they said. And then I remember like the first thing that they asked you is like, can you identify like your perpetrator or whatever in the room and like say something that he's wearing. And so like you had to point to him, and I just remember he had this like pink like weird tie on or some shit, and I was like, yeah, he's over there with the pink tie. And then like it was so like surreal almost, you know?
So
And
surreal. Oh,
yeah,
that is exactly the word. And it's a similar feeling to actually being molested in terms of that just absurdity. And you're like, I just can't really fathom that this is actually what my reality is right now.
yeah.
And, I'm curious because I think part of why, when I read the transcript from my trial and they asked me to pick out, the prosecuting attorney asked me to identify Jim in the courtroom. And the defense attorney was like, objection, Your Honor, will stipulate that Sebastian knows who Jim is and can pick him out. And I've always been curious about, like, I wonder why he didn't have me do that. And I think it's because the idea of having like an 11-year-old pick out the person would just be super influential if you're the jury or whatever. I think that's probably why.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
there must just be like a certain age where they're like, all right, like,
yeah. I think it
that,
kind of like not like worked against us, but like since we weren't kids anymore, you know, like I was like pretty much an adult and like Camryn was, you know, like 16, like it was different. Even though we were testifying to things that happened to us when we were little kids, you know, it was different because we were looked at as adults.
Yeah. It's not as big of an advantage as you'd think, though. I'll tell you that right now. Still got a pretty ruthless hung jury.
Yeah.
No, but I know what you mean, and I think it's also just the longer the time is between when these things were happening and when you're going to trial about them, it seems like the less people are like likely to be on your side. But I even felt that in the context of like, oh, it's been like however many months since this happened, or, you know, people being like, this went on for 2 years. And that was one of the things that the defense attorney, I remember reading the transcript, and I think in his closing statements, that's what one of his arguments was it was like, no, would a kid really let this go on for 2 years? And it's like, yeah, I was ready to let it go on forever. Why do you think that 2 years was my limit? I don't know. It's crazy. But yes, totally know what you guys mean by picking out all of
it, like, it's funny that you bring up like him like saying that in his like closing statement or whatever, because like in ours, like the attorney's like thing was that like he's just not that guy. Like he would say that over and over. Like, what the hell does that even mean?
Please point out that guy for us. What does he look like? He wears a green tie, not a pink tie. What kind of pedophile wears a pink tie? Like,
right, exactly.
Oh, it's so silly. Also, I think I should clarify. I just realized I've been holding this bottle of it looks like pills. These are homeopathic remedy. I'm in therapy too, and I was having some back spasms when I was doing EMDR about the molestation, and some of the back spasms that I experienced during the molestation were starting to come back, and so she recommended these. And I just realized I've just been picking them up and sort of just playing with them without thinking about it, and I was like, maybe I should clarify that this isn't fentanyl.
He's on drugs.
Yeah. I'm just really holding it together for this hour and a half. It's just so insane. Who is the guy? They don't even provide any like contrasting. Yeah, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
I remember my the first day I went into trial, and back when I was probably in 6th grade, I had actually told one of my friends. I texted her and I was like, this is going on, dude. Like, and she never told anyone else, but not saying she should have, but I'm just glad that she was there for me, you know. Yeah. But they also asked her to testify because obviously I told her, and I told them I told her. So I remember walking up the first day, and I see her, and I'm like, hey, and then she's just like, we weren't sad, but it was just like, you know, not the happiest, but I was so I was just glad I saw someone, you know. And so she was waiting, she was going before me, and then it was just a lot of waiting, in the court, house, just waiting for the next person to be done testifying so you could then go. And so I remember the first day, it was the person on our side,
the defense attorney,
the defense attorney,
district attorney,
yeah.
The DA questioned me first, and then this went good, you know. I told him, and then I had to go home. And the next day I came back, and then the other guy asked me all these questions.
Mine was I feel like mine was 6 hours about all
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Like
Wow.
I was up there for probably about 6 hours between both days.
Yeah. I don't think I was up there too long, but I just remember I like just hated that guy. Like not that it was like
Oh,
he was
yeah.
defending him, but
Not
he
even
was just asking like the most outrageous
Yeah.
questions where I was like, dude, like what the
Yeah.
hell? Like
you're pissing me off.
yeah, like one
They're so slimy and just
Yeah,
like
they
what
totally
the
are.
like
what
I
is
remember
your
the
job?
grades-
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The grades thing just really just like peeved me off. I was like,
what?
yeah, I get good grades. The grades
Oh, the
thing.
grades thing. Yeah.
He was like, and you were on the honor roll. Like, I was trying to do good, bro. Like, and especially because school was really like
An
an
escape.
escape. Like, we
Yeah.
liked school, we liked our environment, loved our teachers, and it's like now you're throwing us under the bus for that too. Like, dang.
Yeah.
And I remember he tried to say like the camera incident. He was like, well, that could have been your brothers. I was like, ew. I was like, no, my brothers do not want to see me naked, dude. Like,
And at the time, like that this happened, they're seriously probably like 5 and 6
yeah,
years old.
Yeah, like,
Oh
dude,
my
they're
god.
Kids, like they're not
Like,
barely in kindergarten.
he's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I do not know. I do not think that happened. Like,
And this is what's so frustrating about it is like, okay, yeah, hypothetically, it could have been anyone, but like, how are we focusing on this
Right.
being something like I'm telling you that this guy touched me, and this like
Yeah.
all of this stuff is just like additional information that they harp on. They try to poke holes in all this supplemental stuff that really
Yeah.
it's like we're straying away from the main thing here, you know. But
I remember
Yeah.
like my thing was like they asked me so like about how many times did you move, and I was like probably about 10, and then like after like looking through his like papers for like 5 minutes he was like, well actually in the papers it says 7, and I'm like, okay fine, then it was a 7. Like I just said
Yeah,
about
sure.
10. I don't know, like
okay, yeah, it's why would I did you guys get asked like how many times you were molested? Like did you have to
Yeah.
you went through all the different okay, were you ever asked like the extent of time that it lasted?
probably, but I don't
I don't
remember.
that, but
Okay, that was I think probably one of the most absurd things of my case was being asked to the number of seconds how long these instances lasted for.
No.
And
yeah, I was
and then-
just looking at my stopwatch. That I
yeah,
had
let me
going,
check
like,
my Apple Watch, dickhead. I'm not.
Yeah.
Why would I be counting this? I'm explicitly trying to not think that this is happening, let alone
Right.
keep
Yeah.
track of time. It
And
was
also
so-
like you even when you're that young, like you don't even know time when you want to remember it, you know, like
yeah,
you
Yeah.
know, like it's just
I don't even know what day it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much whatever happens. I mean, obviously, their job and goal is to poke as many holes in your story as possible, but the holes that they're poking become so ridiculous, and yet they're treating these holes. Holes isn't even the right word. They're treating these hypothetical holes as like legitimate reasons why this may not have happened.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
As if I want you to think that my stepdad was recording me in the shower.
Yeah, what
When
the-
maybe it was actually my brothers and I was just embarrassed. I want to pin it on my stepdad. And to think too, like in the context of you guys are almost adults, in your case Camryn, an adult in your case Maddie, you're talking about this like just because it happened 6 or however many years ago doesn't mean you're like even more likely. Like why would I want people to think that it happened now that I'm 20? But like there's
Right.
just nothing. It's so crazy on paper and in person, and yet this is like the main defense tactics that are used in court, and like people get off with these tactics.
Yeah, and
Because it's-
apparently some of it worked. I mean,
worked.
both of ours were hung juries, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so and I want to get into that too. So what was the rest of your sort of trial experiences like? I mean, do you
So,
guys go ahead?
I mean, sorry. But I just remember like one other thing when he was like bringing up the defense attorney was questioning me, and he was just like, oh, like about when I got the soap in my eyes, you yelled for help. You yelled for help. I was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't really remember, but I don't think I made that much noise. He's like, well, I have your notes. I have your notes. Would you like to review them? I'm like, yeah, I would like to review them actually. And okay, get my notes. And in my notes, it literally says like word for word, like I must have made a noise or screamed or something. I do not remember. And so Kay read that for the court, and I was just like,
I told
and
you.
he just moved on to the next question. I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what? in the hell
Can we
did I
spend
say?
one moment of focusing on you being wrong for a second?
Yeah.
Like, you just have been poking holes in my story for the
Right.
last 5 hours. Why can't we focus on the fact that you just tried to put words in my mouth despite having the transcript and seeing that that's not what I said?
And he, like, I just remember so specifically, like, he spent so much time like rummaging through papers on like
Oh,
his
yeah.
table and like just like looking through stuff and like just like thinking, like standing around and like thinking. And I'm like, you literally look like an idiot right now. Like,
Such a dingus.
and he thought that, I feel like he thought that like him like looking through all these papers was gonna like trip us up or something and like think that he had some like
Some like much
papers
evidence.
or
I don't know.
something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, we know that there's like literally nothing you can say to us, you know, that we don't already obviously
we're telling
know.
the truth.
Yeah.
Like, we're
So after the trial like ended, it was actually, let's see, it was my grandma's birthday, and we had been waiting for like a couple days because when there is a hung jury, you know, like they keep telling him like, oh, like go back and try for a little longer, you know, or whatever. And so it was my grandma's birthday. Poor grandma. They called her and said like, yeah, there's no way that they're gonna like figure this out. Like the jury's hung. And at that point we didn't know anything really, you know, they just said that, and like immediately me and Camryn went on vacation. We're like, this is fucked.
Yeah.
Like we're out of here.
Yeah.
So we went on vacation for like a few days, and we came back and we met with the district attorney and our victim advocates, and they told us a lot of stuff, but like most of what it was essentially the jury was hung 11-1 in our favor. There was only one juror that could not agree.
Oh my God.
And that one juror admitted in the beginning of the trial that she knew him and his family from the local community pool from when he was younger.
And they let her stay?
Yep. They essentially asked her, the judge said, oh, well, like, do you think you can still be, you know, impartial? And she said, yeah. So they let her stay on. And she was the foreperson of the jury.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so insane. It's such a failure of the court system and so standard.
Yes. So
Oh
we
my
were like
God.
pissed pretty much. We were really annoyed that he, you know, like let that happen and whatever. She
What
was
the
like,
fuck?
yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, she was like, I knew at the beginning of the trial, you know, but I didn't want to tell you guys because I was afraid that like you guys wouldn't do your best, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever. And then she, you know, like gave us all these options. Like, do you want to go back to trial? Do you want to try to offer him a plea deal? Do you just want to be done altogether and like let this go? Like, what do you guys want to do? And we agreed that we would try to offer him a plea deal of like some less years than 25, and that the lowest we would go is 10 years, so that she could go back and forth a little bit, you know, with him and his lawyer.
To try for the most and
Right.
kind of work her way down.
Right.
So they started doing
Jail
that.
auction.
He literally
15 going once. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so he accepted the plea deal of like 10 years, which was our lowest. So we were like, fine, whatever. Okay, we're just happy kind of that we don't have to, you know, go back to trial or whatever.
But also,
And-
like, didn't he accept the plea deal like a week before the like second trial?
Yeah, so
Like
that's
he
right.
really
That's
drug
right.
us.
He
Really, we
didn't.
thought we were going to
Yeah.
another trial. Like we
He
were
did
preparing.
not-
We were like, fuck, we're gonna.
He didn't accept any plea deal,
Mhm.
and then we were all ready for like another trial, and then he finally was like, okay, like I'll just take the deal. And then we went to like, you know, sentencing hearing or whatever, and like it was like really frustrating like for our family because like he was like a dick like through the whole like sentencing hearing pretty much, because the judge like asks you, you know, like you know, like what crimes did you commit essentially to like be here and like that kind of stuff. And like he was just kind of like making a joke, and like he was laughing about it and like about how he like molested us, and like it was like really pissing like our family off. But like, I feel like we were just at a point where it's just like, we knew that like he was going to be a dick about everything. So we were just like, whatever, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, have fun laughing in jail. Like,
exactly. Laugh your way to prison.
Yeah.
And then, I would say it was like 2 weeks maybe after that, we got a call from the district attorney, and she was like, so his plea deal may become void because the judge that, overheard his sentencing and sentenced him had like a conflict on another case, and he's had to recuse himself from every single case. And we're like, great.
Oh my God.
So we're like, okay, now we're probably going back to trial, And so we're kind of preparing for that, like whatever. And she finally tells us like, yeah, he's going to try to get his, plea deal revoked, and he wants to go back to trial. So when we go again to hear his like appeal or whatever, the judge that is sitting over this case is the same judge that we had during our whole entire trial that let that lady on the jury who knew him. So we really didn't have a lot of faith in him. We were like, I don't know if this is, going to go very well.
Yeah.
But he like started coming up with like all this like weird stuff that like his like lawyer like forced him to do the plea deal, because if he didn't take the plea deal, he would never see the light of day again. I'm like, well, yeah, you probably would. So like,
exactly.
You're probably smart.
Yeah.
And then just the judge was basically just like, no, like, no, like
you,
because during the whole sentencing, it's like, are you clear-minded right now? Like, do you really want to do this? It's like 30 minutes of like, are you sure, dude? Like, are you sure?
Are you for sure?
And so the judge was like, no, like we went through all this. The other judge was very thorough. Like, no, like you said you would enter this. Sorry. Like, like you were of your right mind. Like you can't just go back now. Like you can't change your mind on this. Sorry. And so, yay, finally it was just, that's 10 years. And we got to like schedule or like.
No, we did it right then.
Oh.
Remember we came with our,
Oh, then I guess maybe we did it right then. But
nice.
So after the judge said like, like this is garbage, like you're going to prison, like you agreed to this, like it's over. We got to do our victim impact statements to the court. I kind of like worried about like what to say a lot, and I feel like a good like portion of mine was like kind of like directed at the court almost to like tell them that like we were pretty much just like dragged around everywhere and like had no like say in like a lot of this, and nobody really cared what we had to say this whole time, and like now I finally get to like say what's up to you guys because it's kind of been like a little bit torturous, and like this fool has like so many rights right now, and like we pretty much have none. Like that's backwards, Not that they're gonna do anything, but and then like also just saying like pretty much how well I was doing, but honestly during that time I was like not doing my greatest. Like I was like just like pretty much going off the rails, like partying and stuff. And like quickly after that, honestly, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like you're fine, pretty much, like go back to therapy. And I did, and it's been great. But yeah, I think it was good for me because like I just kind of like got to like lay whatever I wanted on the table, and like it felt to me like I just kind of like washed my hands of it at that time, and I was didn't have to worry about this for a long time, until I got out.
Right.
And at first when like they told me like, you can write a statement and like say it to the court and to him, and I was like, I like looked up on like YouTube like victim impact statements. Like I don't know what I'm gonna say, and like I had like an idea in my head that it was like kind of sad, like, oh, like you ruined me, like you like this is so horrible, like I'm so like down bad over this, like you know what I mean? So I was like, I don't really want to do one. And then I like watched these videos, and I think it was some like the US gymnasts like from the Larry Nassar case, and I watched their like ones, and it was just really empowering, like kind of just like F you, like like I'm doing great, like yeah, you did this, but it's not gonna ruin my life. And then like that kind of inspired me to write my own. I was just like, yeah, like this is great. And that's basically like what I said in it. Like I don't hold any resentment towards you, like you like you know, like this made me stronger, and like I hope you better yourself, because yikes, dude, like you got some stuff to work on, like, you know. And that was just so freeing. Like I feel like it was really like, it just like wiped my hands of him. Like I was just like, you know, that's the last thing I gotta say to you, man. Like I think my last sentence was just like, I hope like you better yourself. Like
during this time.
During this time. Like, it's a long time you got to
think about it.
That's like incredibly powerful. I think that sometimes we feel like, and obviously there's no right way to feel about all of this stuff, but in my experience, I think that the best that I've ever felt is when I no longer feel tied to the experience in terms of like the negative feelings, guilt, anger, anything that I'm still holding on to with regards to these experiences. It ties you to the past, and it makes you, I think, probably the most impactful thing you could have said to your stepdad in that moment was like, good luck, dude. I hope you figure out what the fuck is wrong with you.
Seriously.
It shows that he doesn't have power over you. And anything that we would do to hold on to these negative experiences would just be, it's just sort of torturing ourselves. And instead of knowing that like you're safe now, and you don't have to keep reliving these experiences or keep thinking that you're a victim or any of these things that people often do. And like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I know the power of forgiveness, or just, you know, forgiveness, like we always say, it's like, it's for us, it's for the people that are doing the forgiving, and it just allows you to let go and move on and
totally,
you know, heal.
And I think that like a bigger part for me, other than forgiving him, was like forgiving myself. Because I held myself like so accountable for, you know, a lot of things that went on, like to me and to my sister and, you know, my siblings and that kind of stuff. And like, that was so hard for me to like forgive myself and be like, you were a kid too. Like, you know, So, but he was like pissed off like the whole entire time we were like reading our, you know, statements or whatever. Like he was pissed, and like he kept trying to like say like comments or whatever. Like I'm like, bro, you're literally sitting next to me in
an orange jumpsuit. That was our favorite part. Was
with,
going
like,
to the
shackles.
court dates, and his feet were shackled, his hands in an orange jumpsuit. That was the best.
So this is during the victim testimonies. He was saying things while you guys were talking.
Like just like shaking his head, like
it's over, dude.
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing?
And like they said that like they're like, all right, you know, like, because in the beginning he was like refusing to like tell them like if he had any guns and all this stuff, because like when you're a felon, you know, you gotta like report all that stuff or whatever. So he's like refusing all this stuff, but that was like a little part. But then they were like, all right, we're done here. Oh wait, we forgot the best part. Okay, well, this is not the best part, but so I think it was Camryn that was up there doing her.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was either my grandma or my grandpa, and they were up there telling their victim impact statement. And then all of a sudden but the district attorney stands up and she's like, we have reason to believe that someone in this courtroom is like recording this hearing right now without the court's knowledge. And we're like looking around, we're like, who's recording us? Like, that's kind of weird. And it was actually our neighbor from across the street that had introduced them. She had like been on like his side for like this whole time, and like pretty much harassed us like when we would go to court dates and stuff. And like, so she was like recording our like victim impact statements or whatever. And so the bailiff like went over to her and was like, okay, like, were you recording? And she's like, no. And she's like, okay, give me your phone. And so she takes her phone. She's like, well, you know, unlock it. So she unlocks it, and you can see that she's like been recording.
On record, like
I'm like,
oh my god.
So gets her phone taken away like mid court date, and the bailiff like gives it to our detective. Because the detective's like, like whatever, like I want to investigate. Like, and it ended up like she just deleted the video, and but the detective, you know, that we were working with, she was like, like I'm gonna need to like probably investigate this further, which she didn't have to say. And so she kept it for like 3 or 4 days, and just didn't give it back to her, which was kind of funny.
Good.
Wow.
But,
it was like crazy. And like even like just like thinking back about it and like talking about it now, I'm like, damn, like that was a lot of shit, you know. like just from the trial.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I've just in the last couple of months going back to the therapy, like I've begun to realize the impact that the trial actually had on me in terms of my trust in my truth, my ability to actually like speak up and voice what I really believe. And when we go through these experiences, like it's hard to not be affected and to be conditioned to think like, okay, if I do speak up about something that's happened to me or I do tell the truth, like these are all the emotions that I have associated with doing that. So you have to like unlearn that and begin to remember like, oh no, your truth is like your protector. It's like what allowed us to get out of these experiences. It's not something we need to be afraid of telling. But up until therapy, I always just kind of assumed like, oh, this is just it's just the physical molestation that affected me. But the trauma or the trial is traumatizing. And I'm curious, like, what if your guys' experience has been like unpacking the trial, whether in therapy or just on your own or however?
I always like felt like since the day like I walked out like after my like testimony, I always felt like super just good about all my answers I gave. Like, not that I was like, oh, I'm so glad I did that, but I'm just like, yeah, like I just told everyone, like, like the whole room full of people and strangers and whatnot, and it's just like, yeah, like I told my truth. I felt good about my answers. I felt like I delivered decently. So
that's amazing.
Maybe I should dig more into that in therapy, but I don't know. I've always just felt really good. And even though it was a hung jury, I don't know. I just always felt really good in my.
Yeah, I feel like I did like talk through it a lot in therapy, like after the fact, because it was kind of like a little bit convoluted because since the person that we told first like became my therapist later during the trial and stuff, like we weren't really meeting because we weren't really sure what, like it was just kind of like a weird thing. Like even me and Camryn, like we were there once on the same day and like they told us that like we weren't allowed to like go to lunch together because they didn't want jurors. I'm like, we live together.
Yeah.
And so like we just didn't know, like all these like
rules. We didn't want to miss trial to like something else we did. Yeah.
So I didn't go to therapy for a while, like, during the trial and like for a little while after and stuff. But like when I did finally start going back, like we definitely talked about it a lot. And I've always been more of like a like cognitive behavioral like has worked best for me, and I know that doesn't work best for like a lot of people, but it's been really good for me. And so for me, just talking it out like over and over helped. Yeah
Totally.
And that's what I was going to kind of ask you about, because I know my therapists have brought up EMDR and like trying, and I have been kind of resistant to that because I'm like, if my brain buried something, maybe it should be buried like for a while. You know what I mean? Like maybe they did that for a reason. Like maybe I should trust myself. But she has like really encouraged me to, because she thinks I don't know if she thinks I have like, but I don't remember a lot like from my childhood, like Maddie. Mm-hmm. So she thinks, it could maybe help. So what's like your experience with that? Or were you nervous about getting into that or?
Yeah, I mean, I was exactly the same way with both therapy and EMDR. I was resistant to both of them because I think with doing stand-up, like when I started doing stand-up about it, I was like, oh, look, I figured out a way to do this. I don't have to go to therapy. And I'd had 2 bad therapists in my life before I found my most recent one. And a bad therapist really can turn you off the entire experience. And so a lot of it is just finding somebody that you click with. So when I found this person who I did click with and really has been tremendously helpful, she's like a child abuse specific therapist, so she knows a lot of the things that we're talking about. And when I did EMDR for the first time, I mean, I'd heard all of these amazing experiences that people have had from this podcast and just people that and other people that I've spoken to. But I remember doing the first EMDR session and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's over Zoom and, she moves her hand back and forth to do this eye movement therapy. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. And I felt the resistance and I noticed the thoughts that I was having that made me very not open to the experience. And so the first time it wasn't really impactful at all. And then the second time, I was a lot more open. I was like, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And we did it with regards to the trial. And it was so trippy. basically got back into the headspace, or like I was my current self viewing the trial from my current self's perspective, like standing behind my younger self. So I could see the courtroom, and I could see my younger self, and I could see the jury and Jim and all the people, the strangers, the judge. And have you guys seen Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No.
I have not.
Okay, it's a movie that just came out. It's sort of similar to this experience, and it's kind of hard to describe without sounding kind of crazy, but it's just what I experienced. And so basically what happened was everything in the trial kind of froze, and my younger self like turned around and like looked at me. And he was like looking at me, and I was looking at him, and he had this look on his face that was just like shock, like just what the fuck is going on? How is this? Why am I here? What's going on? And I remember, and I'm like bawling during this whole sequence in my current reality, and like going through like a lot of emotions. And basically, I was just able to, we weren't like talking, but I was able to interact with him in some capacity that was like reassuring him that it's going to be okay. And like, if, you know, we're going to turn this into something really positive, and you're going to heal, and all these things that I wanted to have somebody tell me in that moment when I was on the stand. And it was this crazy bridge between like my younger self and my current self that, had I not had that experience, I would have been like, that's impossible, and I don't know how this is even, what are you talking about? But it was so real in the moment. And towards the end of this exchange between me and my younger self, my therapist was like, why don't you take him somewhere safe? And so I like, you know, he stood up out of the stand chair, and I took his hand, and we walked out of this like frozen courtroom, like very slowly, like looking around and seeing nobody was moving. And then we walked out of the courtroom. And it was just like this incredible moment of what felt like a reintegration of a moment of shock that I experienced, hours of shock that I experienced on the stand, basically bringing that part of my younger self back into my current reality and being like, hey, you're safe, and like, I've got you type thing. It was incredible, and it was a very fun feeling, but I didn't even know that I was harboring all of this shock-induced like emotional suppression until I did that session, and was like probably crying for like 40 minutes straight. And this is like, you know, I've been talking about this experience for 5 years, or, you know, somewhere around that time frame. And yet, without this sort of emotional push in this direction with the help of my therapist and EMDR, I don't know if I would have been able to get down to those emotional depths of suppression. So I'm now this huge advocate. This is literally just as of like a month and a half ago, but like I am a major advocate for EMDR and what it can do. And obviously, you know, the experience was much more intense and in depth than that, but it was this re-examination and sort of rewiring in my brain of the experience. That's something that I can now reflect on from the perspective that I have now, which is like, oh, I'm safe. I don't need to worry about thinking about these things. And you know, maybe that's part of what when you were saying how good it made you feel doing this testimony and things, you know, it affects us all differently, and maybe it's not something that you need to go to therapy about. I don't know, but if it's something that you're thinking about, even if it's not the trial, even if it's the molestation, you know, EMDR will allow you to bring things that you have buried to the surface, and it makes your whole existence lighter. I mean, it's like an unraveling and releasing of literal physical tension in your body that you're unaware of. So I can't recommend it enough, and I would love to hear what it's like if you ever do it.
Maybe I'll give it a shot now, because I don't know. I kind of thought of EMDR like you know, bringing back like covered memories, or like memories that you buried down, and like, I don't know. It's kind of scary. It's scary, you know, being emotional, being vulnerable, doing this, but, you know.
I mean, I'm right there with you. I was like very much under the impression that if I showed emotions, that was like me admitting that I was fucked up and traumatized. And so like the more emotional I was, the more traumatized I was. So I was like suppressing this stuff in school, you know, in every situation that I was in. Like, I was not trying to be emotional. And now experiencing like the polar opposite of that, it's not even close how it affects your life and your relationships and just your ability to move on and grow from these experiences. It's for me, it hasn't been so much like remembering new things so much as recontextualizing the things that I do remember. I know for a lot of people, it's like remembering entirely new experiences. But for me, I seem to remember most things from that time frame. So it's more just like going back in and reminding myself that this is not the state of things anymore, and that, don't need to be afraid.
Yeah, I think I will. Awesome. Yeah, I think I will. That's really awesome. Talk to my therapist, give it a try, because she's been really encouraging it. Like, she thought,
then I think probably it's a great idea. Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. I think that I benefited tremendously from therapy even without doing EMDR, but just having somebody that you can talk to who there's no ties to your outside world, or especially when we're talking about these survivor mentalities of like the people that you're trying to manage emotionally and not affect anybody else. Like, it can be really helpful just to have somebody who you can talk to without any worries about those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Anyway, just it's so, man, this is so cool. I have so many. Okay, I know I don't want to go for too long because you guys have been so nice with your time. I wanted to ask you a couple of more things. You said it was a small town that you lived in. Was this like, did people know about this while it was going on? Was this something that was publicized? I know for me, they had a bunch of articles and things written like that. So I'm just curious if.
Oh my goodness.
It's so stupid.
No. So it was more of like pretty much the whole town knew about my mom's drug addiction, but like no one would ever really like say anything about it, because like everything had to be like peachy,
Yeah.
So like no one, like everyone obviously knew that she was high like everywhere we went, but like no one ever said anything to us. But definitely no one knew anything about like the sexual abuse when it was going on. And even now, I mean, I think that people probably know, because like I know that they're, obviously the people that were on the jury are a part of our community somehow.
Yeah.
Obviously people know that we've shared it with, that, we're close to us, and like Camryn's friend that, is obviously part of our town, but like it really wasn't publicized or anything. Like, that's crazy for you.
No articles. But I mean, I don't know if I'd be like glad, but it's like, I mean, he's gonna come back. Like, he's gonna come back eventually, and it's like,
totally.
I've even thought about like making posters like when he comes back, or like when he's out, and just being like, hey, just watch out, guys, like watch out.
Yeah, because
that's like, a great idea.
I mean,
and he is getting out relatively soon. Because of like COVID and stuff, like they were like knocking, a bunch of time off people's sentences that were like non-violent offenders. I'm like,
that's violent.
Fuck. Like, how is this not a violent?
How is this non-violent?
Yeah, exactly.
And time off for good behavior. Like, they're in jail. Like, they have
there's no kids to molest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, he went to jail. What year was that? Maybe like 2018-ish. Like the beginning of 2018.
Getting out soon?
He's getting out in 2024.
Whoa. Damn, how does that make you guys feel?
Honestly, I was like kind of like pissed off about it. Like, it was like really frustrating to me, and like I felt like kind of like shysted. Like, we agreed to 10 years and it should be 10 years, Like, I don't
at least 8. Like, at least
really,
like 80% of his time. Like, I know
they said that
gets shoved off.
They said that 8.5 would be like standard. Because in California you only serve 85% of your sentence, I guess, until you're considered for parole. So we were expecting for sure 8.5 years, and then like, you can check online, and like the more that I checked, the more it was like going down, and I was like, oh my God. And so eventually I was just kind of like, you know what, like, he's gonna be out anyway, so like, why am I worrying myself about this? And like, why am I like so stressed about like the number of like days or years? Like, he's been punished, like not as much as he should have, obviously, in my perspective, but we did get some justice and a lot of closure from all of that, and so I'm grateful for that now, and we're just kind of dealing with it as it comes.
And especially since so many like like people who've been through this like don't like ever get justice, don't even ever get to go to trial or even tell the police like about their story. So I'm just so like grateful that he got any time at all, honestly. And like, I like when I first like kind of heard his time was dropping off, I was like, dang, like I kind of thought like we shouldn't have gave him that plea deal. Like, he could have been in jail like forever.
Right.
But then I've kind of come to terms with like, you need like, you weren't ready to go back to trial, like that
Right.
second trial. Like that was something you really needed him to take that plea deal.
Right.
And like now I have to honor like my past self and be like, you know, like right now you're kind of upset about that, but that's what you needed in the time. And he got some time at all, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Well, who knows if you would have gotten, you know, another community member who knew this guy. It sounds like it probably wouldn't have been a different. I mean, I will say getting 11 out of 12 is amazing as it is, you know. I mean, that's unheard of. I was 6 and 6.
It's crazy to me that like they all have to agree. Like I could not pick
majority.
12, I could not pick 12 people off the street and probably agree with them about literally anything.
Nothing.
You know?
Yeah.
It's crazy that they all have to agree. Like that's a little bit outrageous.
It is so outrageous, and is why we need to change the way that these systems operate, especially with regards to child abuse. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine that it is super frustrating, but just the fact that you guys were able to have him get time at all is an achievement. And like, it just shows, you know, your ability to talk about these things and articulate. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I've always been curious, like, what would I have wanted from the trial? And I just didn't. I don't know. I guess it would have been great for him to go to. You don't really know what you want, but you know that you don't want it to happen anymore, and you don't. And so it's like, you know, you really, given the circumstances, you did an amazing job, and it's not. I'm sure that it's frustrating, but I also, what the fuck? Why does COVID allow you to get out sooner? Because people are getting COVID in jail.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who cares? COVID. People are getting COVID outside of prison.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine.
Yeah. What was it like speaking up for the first time, Camryn? I know you told your friend, and so I wanted to ask you about that. And then for both of you, what was it like talking to your grandma?
For my friend, like it was. Well, that was actually like kind of an interesting thing because after the trial was over, we like talked about it and she like remembers me telling her at a sleepover, but I remember like texting her about it the first time. Like I don't remember ever telling her in person, but I remember one time like at recess, she was like, "How's that going?" Like, how's it going with your stepdad? I'm just like, it's like, I don't know, man.
At least she checked in.
I know, like at least she checked in, like, gosh, yeah. But
wait, that's so significant that you, because I had told one of my friends too, and I didn't even remember until I was testifying, and they were like, "Do you remember? Does the wiggle game mean anything to you?" And I had told my friend all about the initial molestation, but I had completely forgotten about it. And just in the same way that you remember it as you texting her, and she remembers it as you talking to her about it at a sleepover. Like, we just don't remember the logistics, and sometimes we don't remember it at all. But it's that is so wow. What a great friend.
I know, seriously. And I remember like I like happy that someone else knew.
Yeah.
Like I didn't, not that I thought, like I wasn't scared she was gonna tell anyone or anything. I was just like, I'm glad someone else like knows about this.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it was comforting. And with my grandma, like we didn't talk like about specifics or anything. It was really just like those questions like, did anything happen to you? And I was like, yeah. And like we've talked about it since like it happened, like, you know, like just that it happened, but we never like talked about specifics or anything that just, I don't feel the need. Like I don't really want to tell my grandma that. Like,
of course, yeah.
You know, but of course if she ever like wanted to know or like, you know.
Well, she is going to listen to this podcast, so she will hear.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Madison?
Because it was kind of the same thing with my grandma. Like she just, once I told her that something happened, she's like, okay, well I guess we'll figure this out. And we were both just like, okay. And then she went to her room and I stayed in my room and I went to sleep. And then the next day she was like, okay, we're going right now.
Straight to business. She got it all done for us. So.
Yeah.
Right. And you were gonna, just before I asked you that, Madison, you said it's funny blank. Were you gonna say something else?
Like me and Camryn have like always like joked, you know, like about our trauma or like whatever, like between each other, because like, you know, even though it wasn't like the same, like we were obviously both there through at all, even though we don't have the same perspective on things. But she like despises that we like joke about it. Like she gets like she gets super frustrated, and she's like, it's not funny. Like, and we're like, okay, well, you weren't molested, so you don't get to, you don't get to be on the jokes. And so
she's like, I want you guys to heal, but I just don't find it funny. Like, I just don't. I'm like, that's okay, girl.
That's
like,
fine. Yeah.
That's all right. Like,
it's not for everybody. And I think especially with older generations, this is a super foreign concept. And I think for younger generations, it's like, how could we not do this? This is like the easiest way to talk about it.
The only way to like, you know, try to prevent it from happening in the future.
The way to guarantee that it continues is to not talk about it. So yeah, you mentioned earlier how you hadn't heard about like the details or logistics of each other's experiences until today. So I want to ask, because the healing that you've done is so palpable, and it's just incredible to see the people that you are today and the way that you're able to talk about these experiences. So I'm just curious, like, what is it like hearing each other's stories now?
I don't know. Like, I just think, like, I don't know, like, just she's amazing. Yeah. Like, she made it through everything, and I almost like think more like highly of her than like myself, because I don't know, it's just like, you're just amazing. And just hearing like even more of her story, it's just like, wow, well, you're just even, it's more amazing that you're here where you are now. And it's just like, wow.
And I think, obviously, I think the same exact thing about her. Like, she's always been like when we were younger, like I was always, you know, like the nice, you know, little girl, you know, like very compliant. She was always like, oh, like she's wild, like, you know, like, and so like that, like, I don't know, for me, like, I wish that I was more like that, like when I was a kid, and even now, but it's just amazing to like have watched her, you know, all these years. And like, even like when we were like in the like thick of our abuse, pretty much, like, and we were sisters, we fought all the time, but like, just like how much like the love, you know, like that I have for her is just like unimaginable, you know, and like just how strong that she's been through all this for me, you know, it's amazing for sure.
Ah, it's so good. I love it. I feel very lucky to be able to talk with both of you right now. This is exactly what the podcast is about. I mean, you guys are so perfect for this, and it's so easy to talk to you about all of this. Can you imagine if this is what the standard conversation was?
Right.
How easy it would be to tell people. There's no guilt about like offloading our experiences onto the other people, because you can feel how like you're receiving the information and vice versa. It's the easiest way to communicate about these things. I just feel so fortunate to have you guys on. It's really, it's an
We're
amazing
fortunate to be here. Yeah. And honestly, thank you so much for opening up this space, you know, like it's so important for people to have space like this, you know, and there's not enough of it. That's for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Well, you're so welcome. And it's, you know, just as helpful for me, every one of these conversations. So it's like, it's so good. It's so easy to listen to you talk about these things. And I just wanted to ask you both, what advice would you give to somebody who has been through something similar, who is hoping to get to the point where you're at now?
Honestly, go to therapy for yourself and for the people around you, you know? And I know we talked a little bit earlier about like finding a good therapist, and like it's so hard. So like don't give up, because like there is definitely someone out there that you'll meet and you'll be like, this is my therapist forever. Like you're never leaving, you know? But you do have to do a lot of work to find that person sometimes, unfortunately, you know? And so, yeah, definitely, even though it sucks, like my grandma always says, like, you're in therapy because of people who wouldn't go to therapy. Like that's what I always think about, you know, like if I go to therapy, you know, then like maybe someone along, you know, my life won't have to. And recently I found out that I'm pregnant, and so
congratulations.
Yeah, I'll be having a little bean soon. So we're, you know, I'm thankful that I've already kind of like worked through all this stuff, because I can only imagine what that would be like, and to not have worked through that already. So yeah,
Oh, that's
therapy.
such incredible timing to be able to like go into parenthood having done all of this healing and also to know everything that you know. I mean,
Yes.
that's like you couldn't be more prepared to provide this kid with like everything that he or she needs to know to avoid these things from happening and also just to like it's not like restricted to molestation. Like the tools that we pick up healing from these experiences are applicable in so many different areas of your life. Just also being like emotionally available and like, when we
Yeah.
don't heal from these things, it's hard to open up and be there for other people because we haven't been there for ourselves yet. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, what a lucky kid.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
super excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, my advice would just be I have it like tattooed on my arm, but it's just stay soft. And sometimes like people hear that and they're like, oh my, that's weird. But it's just like don't like let the things you go through or like people who've done you wrong like make you like any different than who you are or make you like scared to show your emotions or anything. Just, don't let it harden you up too much and
Stay soft.
stay soft. Like have soft heart, yeah.
I love that. I feel like it's sort of synonymous with just like remaining open. Like not, don't take it too seriously. Everything is you can heal from anything. I would never have associated the way that you said that made total perfect sense. Stay soft in my head initially. That's not where my head went, but, but it's like total. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
When did you get that?
I just got it a few months ago, but I saw it like it was like a random quote, like probably on Instagram or something, and I was just like, I love that. And then I just like, stuck with me for a long time. I was just like, yeah, need a good reminder of that. So
Well, it feels like the rigidity, like the hard exterior is like what prevents so many people from healing. It's like, no, you can't. I gotta, this existence is serious. It's like, how the fuck did we get here? I don't even like.
yeah.
It's so not that serious, and it's entirely up to us how we perceive it. And I love that. I'm gonna try to stay soft as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think about like sleepovers and stuff? Because like since I've been pregnant, like I've thought so much about like, what we are going to do to like obviously prevent this from ever happening, and how to talk about that. And like, I don't know, we've just talked a lot about like no sleepovers. Like, why do you need to sleep at someone else's house? And like since it happened to you at sleepovers all the time, I'm just curious, what do you think? Like,
if my parents had tried to get me to not sleep over or not have sleepovers during that point in my life, especially, I mean, I would have thrown a fucking fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like prime time hanging out, connecting, and all this stuff. But I've done a bunch of thinking about this too, because I'm not pregnant, but I'm certainly considering, what it's going to be like and how am I going to raise my kids. And I think that it's an environment that you can't control that I don't think is essential to having friends. I think that like you can stay late, like we'll pick you up late. It's no problem. I have a friend of mine who never did sleepovers just because he was like, he had some anxious attachment, I think, to his family, and he just always wanted to sleep at home. And he's like one of my best friends to this day. I don't think any less of him and so it's like, I think that you can still have an amazing childhood with friends and all of the things that we think we weren't going to have if we didn't have sleepovers. And I think that the risk just outweighs the reward. This is me adding this in post podcast. I was just back home with my family in Seattle for the last 2 weeks, and we were talking about sleepovers, and we realized, like a lot of the times when I got molested, there were other kids in the bed, and we were thinking like, how is it that they didn't wake up? And we kind of realized like, the guy who molested me was probably drugging the other kids, and maybe he was drugging me. Maybe there were nights where he drugged me and molested other kids. If you're willing to molest a kid, you're certainly willing to drug kids. I don't think that there's a molester moral high ground there where they wouldn't do that if they're willing to touch a kid. So, sleepovers are really the only time where it would be reasonable for your kid to pass out for 8 hours and have that actually be a good thing. Any other time, if this guy were to drug your kid, it would be like really obvious that this is not right. But at a sleepover, it would be pretty reasonable. and how easy it would be for the parent at the house that everyone's sleeping over at to administer a drug in a drink or what you're eating or something, you know. It doesn't have to be like a crazy sleep drug. It could just be some Benadryl or whatever, you know. Basically, it's just that this type of scenario really only ever presents itself at sleepovers. And I think that that is enough of a reason to not have them. I know that if you don't let your kids sleep over at places, you are drastically decreasing the likelihood of them getting molested.
Yeah.
I also know plenty of people who were molested in all sorts of different experiences, different circumstances. So like, it's not just restricted to sleepovers, but it seems like they so often happen there enough where it would be worth it to not let them do it. Probably what's more important than where you let your kid go is what you talk to your kid about. Like,
absolutely,
having the line of communication, like we were talking about, like a regular check-in, knowing what you know about, like, even if you ask a certain question, it might not be the right one that allows them to open up. So knowing that you have to phrase it in a way that allows them to feel safe enough to tell you, and also lets them know that like nothing bad will come to them or anyone that they love or care about. Making sure your kid is safe and comfortable telling you about things, I think, is even more important than the situations that you let them go into.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think you can not let your kid have sleepovers and still have them have an amazing life.
Totally.
Yeah.
You could literally pick your kid up as kids are falling asleep and then drop them off in the morning.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So there are ways around it, but what we do know is that we can't just keep doing what we've been doing and not talking about it. But I think that even if, you know, the open line of communication is also certainly not limited to just molestation benefits, in the same way that your healing isn't just limited to preventing molestation. It's like your kid can all of a sudden talk to you about anything. I mean, I remember my parents, like, they would always be like, we know you're going to do things like drink and various things. So we just want to know where you are. And we want you to know that you can always reach out to us if you're ever in trouble or need anything. And I know a lot of my friends weren't able to do that with their parents because they were afraid about getting caught, you know, doing these things. And I think I avoided a lot of scenarios that could have been bad because I knew that I could just call my parents to get picked up even if I was drunk or whatever. So I think it's like being able to have that trust, that level of trust that allows you to get out of situations that you're otherwise might be afraid to tell them about. Just letting your kid know that, like, yeah, you're safe no matter what happens. Just let me know. It's probably the most important thing. But let me know.
I'll let you know how it works out.
Yeah, for sure. It has been such a pleasure talking with both of you. I am so grateful for your time and your energy. It's just an absolute treat to chat with you, and thank you for your vulnerability and your openness. And it's just this is what the podcast is all about, and I can't thank you guys enough for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
It was just perfect. I don't know what to say. You guys are fucking awesome.
I know. It was.